So I'll be walking you through today a story behind this idea of digital workers as we evolve into more digital brains. So I'll address this presentation through 5 different questions throughout this dialogue. We assume these concepts of digital brains as really a futuristic idea of, well, it's bringing a great deal to the table. However, as we look at history, we want to look at what has past industrial revolutions as well delivered to us as humans. So let's just take ourselves back in time and just look at one industrial revolution after the other and just see where are we positioned in all of this. So if we look back at the first industrial revolution, it was really designed to amplify our human capability or physical capabilities of movement. And so now it started to amplify our muscles with the advent of steam engines. Now, as we move further with electricity, we start seeing that with electricity, we started now amplifying another physical ability of humans, one of which is with light. Now we are able to start even seeing at night. And so that added another layer of that capability. On the third industrial revolution, we started bringing in electronics and communication. And now for the first time, even in a loud room like this, you guys are still able to hear me, given the ability of our voices being heard. But not only in such a room, those who are even hearing us online are able to start seeing all of this as well. And so throughout the 3 different industrial revolutions, one thing was always in common. We were amplifying our physical abilities. The fourth industrial revolution is unique. It brings something very, very different in life. So with AI, now we're able to amplify our cognitive abilities. And this is unique in the way this thing has been set up. So what do I mean by this? Now, suddenly now, AI is able to help us make decisions, something that is very different than the previous industrial revolutions. And this is the cognitive revolution. Now, bringing all of this, given that this cognitive revolution, what would it mean if we were to ground it a little bit within an enterprise, any organization that we work in? What does this really mean for it? And the best way to put something like this for anyone to understand it is, let's compare a traditional enterprise with some sort of a cognitive enterprise. And so in this case, let's compare your regular taxi company, a traditional taxi company, with Uber as a cognitive enterprise. Within your taxi company, regular taxi company, you'll call dispatch. There's always a human in the loop. You'll tell them where you're located. They'll try to figure out how to triangulate your location. By the time they're able to arrive, you'll haggle on the price and deal with all of that. Now comes the cognitive element in this. The cognitive enterprise in this case is you're talking to the machine directly in Uber. So it's on your app. The machine is already figuring out exactly where you are. It's figuring out what the right driver is. It's even calculating how long will it take for that driver to arrive. It's telling you when will you arrive to your destination. And it's even taking it all the way down to figuring out the right price that you will be. So there is no haggling. And the difference, of course, from the left to the right is here there was always a human in the loop. There is no human in the loop, and that's a major difference. And the impact, of course, is massive. So if we start looking at operational efficiency, customer satisfaction, revenues, reduced costs, or profitability, it is massive. And even if we look at the growth of that enterprise, Uber versus your traditional enterprise, again, the growth is massive. Now, ask your question, if this was done for one industry, the taxi industry, how would we imagine it in other industries? Say if I was in a logistics company or in a retail company or in a manufacturing company, how would I have the Uber equivalent of that in those? And that's really the crux of all of what you're going to be seeing. So with that said, now we move to the third question. If the impact is real, and we've seen it in certain industries, then what's needed to build this cognitive enterprise in your retail industry, in your government industry, and beyond? So to understand this, let's step just a little bit back on some of the quotes of 2 of leaders in this space. Mark Benioff in this case, argues that today's CEOs will be the last cohort to lead all human workforce. This is very unique. So this is going to be the last cohort that actually leads only human workforce. In fact, Sam Altman, on the other hand, argues that they're already expecting to see the first unicorns that are fully led with only one human, with many other digital workers running on, with them. So if that's the case, then let's just step back. What would an enterprise like this need? And the reality of the matter is, like in any regular enterprise, we always need two types of workers. One that deals with all the knowledge work, so you need a digital worker to do it, and one that deals with the robotic work, on the other hand, so you need that physical type of work. And the combination of both, depending on what type of industry you're in, you'll either be leaning towards one, many of this, so if you're in finance, you're expected to have many of the digital workers, but if you're in manufacturing, you would expect to have a bit more on the robotic side versus the other. But it's like any enterprise, rather than just looking at your human workforce, now you're looking at the set of colleagues that are working with you. Now, in my presentation, I'll just focus on one category here, the digital workers. I won't be touching the robotic ones for now. And I'll focus a little bit on what we've been doing at Intelmatics, which is building many of these digital workers for the Saudi market in particular. And we focus heavily on what is in the supply chain. So whether it's in the upstream, midstream, or even downstream of the supply chain, we look at building massive numbers of these AI agents that solve the problems within these enterprises, that make this work much easier. And just to understand this, let's just zoom in on a few of them. So for example, in this case, this is Rashid. This is one of our agents that have been built for that supply chain. In the case of Rashid, he's the real estate development analyst. In any retail entity, as they grow, say you want to expand, you need to figure out where should I open the next store as such. So Rashid does this exactly in the same manner. It does it 10 times more efficiently than your regular human could have done it, because it analyzes, simulates tons of data. And so you talk to Rashid, you interact with Rashid, asking them, where should I open my next store? It analyzes a great deal of data in all of the digital twins that we've been for all the cities within the kingdom or in the region. And it starts to create comparisons. It starts to create this understanding the competition that you have. It pulls tons of data and crunches it all at the fingertips of Rashid, and comes even down to, even in my chain, what would be my ability to suffer from cannibalization as well. So what stores will be suffering from what, and so on and so forth. And it comes with a massive accuracy that goes above 85% of, I would predict the sales in this location with an accuracy, massive accuracy. And so that gives you more of why you would expect this. And so now suddenly Rashid is able to do so much with just that. So this is, imagine it's your JLL consultant that's hired at your enterprise, but now does it 10 times much faster with a flick of. So this is just one simple example that's easy to understand. If we move to Hadi, which is the workforce planning and scheduling manager, where you assume in these retail stores or manufacturing sites that pushing your staff needs to follow a very particular set of schedules, and it's not an easy problem, especially if demand fluctuates. So what Hadi does is it analyzes tons of data on your demand, understands when you would expect to increase or decrease the number of your staff at what time, and what it does is, again, in the same manner. So assume now Hadi is already, you just identified the location, now a store, you want to add to it some staff. Hadi does all of this, calculates all of the staff schedule, the type of staff you need to deploy, at what time. It even goes down to figuring out how to create the bus routing for your staff at what time, so they could even arrive on time. So it takes it all the way down to that throughout the supply of that. So with that said, suddenly now we start seeing Hadi's capability. Haytham, on the other hand, is another type of agent that starts to look at your performance monitor. This is your chief of staff in your organization that understands exactly what's happening in the organization, but not only do they understand it, they can start activating based on the KPIs KPIs that are not being performed well, who do they contact, whether digital or human workers, to tell them, well, you're not doing a good job, or let's activate this, or so on and so forth. And that's exactly what is being done. And it does all of this following up across multiple of the action items throughout the organization, identifying where are the problems, what should be done, and what should be fired, and who fired as in an action, what action should be fired, and beyond, not fired as in letting people go. With that said, so we just gave an idea of, you have many of these digital workers that are able now to do so much of what exactly many of the human workers were able to do across many of these functions as such. Now, as we scale more of these agents, so initially you're deploying 1, 2, 3, 4, but as you scale, how do you manage the rest of this? How do we manage this complexity that starts to emerge very, very quickly with tons of these AI agents in your organization? And this is where the second component of what we work on is, and is very critical, which is the AI operating systems. In our case, this AI operating system, imagine it as the workspace where all these agents operate in and work in. It's like the office space within your organization for humans. This is that office space for the AI digital workers. And in doing so, the best way to understand this is now it becomes the brain of the enterprise, literally the brain of the enterprise. And the way it operates is, the easiest way is to just give you an example. So let's assume you're now a retail chain within Saudi Arabia, you're in Riyadh, and suddenly an unplanned road closure just happened. A certain road just closed, and suddenly your stores will be affected immediately on their inventory that you were just sending to them. So what happens? The AI OS senses this, and it has multiple signals that it has been pulling to just sense this. So it detected mobility shock detected in the city because it already been looking at it. It identifies the immediate risks and looks at the SLAs that are related to it. It looks at all the downstream risks that were just activated due to that exact single shock in the system. And so there was a trigger, and now the AI is able to sense it. The operating system is able to sense it. It takes this now and contextualizes it immediately. So we build what's called ontologies on top of this. So it understands this effect affects what exactly in your organization. It builds it directly to what exactly are the effects. You will be losing this amount of money in this location, in this and in this area. You will be suffering from such and such. And so you understand immediately the propagation of one single effect on all of your system. And you don't understand the first order effects. You can go down to the nth order effects of these propagations. Now, with this then, the AI starts to create plans. It's literally the brain of the enterprise now, starts to suggest what plans should be done. Given this shock in the system, should I find an alternative provider for my event? So I would look for some alternative. Should I wait? Should I do this? Should I do that? And it analyzes the different options and identifies and simulates all the impacts down the line and analyzes the best option and says, well, let's assume plan B is your best option for this. And so now it knows what's happening. Like a human, exactly, CEO trying to weigh in. The difference here is, like the human CEO, it's doing it 10 times faster, crunching the numbers 10 times faster, hundreds of times, thousands of times faster, and then it starts on the execution. That execution could be by telling which digital workers or agents should be doing what, so it sends them all, or even human workers, what you should, each one of them. So it starts to communicate for each one of them the same. And then we continue with that communication where it brings them all in, and it ends by, as it did that action, it starts to learn, did I do better? Or this performance wasn't so great? So it learns from it and updates its brain as such. And it continues doing this exercise throughout. And so with this, we start seeing that the whole idea of this digital brain is now able to take us from a single trigger that happens, a single signal, all the way down to actions and firing up the right agents that are really able to do all of that. Now, let's now reach the last question in this. So I just showed you a little bit of There is a revolution happening, which is fine. We understand this. We've seen cognitive enterprises, the Uber example, and we said, can you mimic this for other industries? And we said, yes, to do so, you need digital workers, AI agents, and there are different types, and we showed some of those examples. And now, but as we grow them, we need something else to manage those digital workers, which is the AI OS, or the operating system, which is the digital brain of the enterprise. And so, given all of this, if cognitive enterprises will become and are already becoming very powerful, what do they mean for the future of work for us all? And it's interesting because that answer differs dramatically depending on where you are in the world, interestingly. So in Europe, China, Japan, there is a fairly large, mature workforce, local workforce population, where that will be disruptive in one way or another. Well, as we look at the Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, that's not the same. The economies are much larger than the local workforce. There is already a significant gap in the local workforce. So there is already a need for filling that gap. Today, it's filled by bringing in expats to fill in that gap. But if I have also an alternative, which is AI workers or robotic workers for that matter, I've been able now to solve that problem much faster. So why we see the region and Saudi Arabia as having way more of an attractive application for AI compared to any other place in the world is precisely for this. And this is where we believe that is really an opportunity. Now, with that said, how do we look at this implication on the workforce? The moment we start bringing in these digital workers, we expect we're already addressing in our region the workforce gaps. We absolutely are boosting performance, and so we start seeing massive boosts in performance, and we're now able to build a real cognitive economy for that matter. Last but not least then, this is just food for thought for all of you just to take away from this. In the past, we as in within Saudi Arabia, we were all trying to always scale our headcount by importing a great deal and depending on foreign labor. Today, we are building these AI agents and digital workers. And the goal, hopefully, is tomorrow, we are exporting a lot of that intelligence to the rest of the world. With that said, thank you so much.